Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we've got a crossover episode. I'm so excited about this one. We've got Heidi and Charles of the podcast Kava and Kettlebells joining us to discuss all things under the Kava umbrella. I am so excited to dive in and learn so much more, so let's get right to it. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. And yeah, I'm excited to talk all things Kava, kratom, everything botanical wise. So we love that stuff. So we'll talk your off on that.
And some backstory for anybody who has never heard of Kava and Kettlebells before. This podcast has been around and has done so much for the kava industry. Heidi and Charles have interviewed so many people. They have tested so many products, and they put all of their honest questions and their feedback out there for all of us to be able to consume and learn from and have conversations about. So as far as I'm concerned, the industry wouldn't be where it is today without them. And it's a pleasure to dive right in. So I'd love to learn the story of what's the origin story of the podcast?
Oof.
Yeah, good question.
I,
So,
I think the origin story started with your idea.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so we just, Charles and I are married. We have two little girls. So our evenings would be, if you're a parent, trying to get the kids to bed. And then we just want to relax. And, we're not big into alcohol. And so we would just drink kava and just sit there and bullshit and talk. And we finally decided like we should record this and, let's start a podcast about it. And it kind of just started as like a joke. And then we're like, no, like
Yeah,
let's do it.
And like, yeah, so Heidi had the actual idea. She's like, hey, we should like do a podcast. And we have been fans of podcasts like before this. Like we've always, anytime we go on a drive, or do whatever, we always have kind of like our podcasts that we go through. So we were always consumers of podcasts, right? Like big on the consumption side. So then the idea of producing and putting it out there, I was kind of like at first I was like, I don't know if I want to do like a podcast. Then like the more how you talked about it, I was like, that might be kind of cool. And so we went and started actually searching, for information on Kava. And I think if people have been in the Kava space for a long time, they know the Kava forums that Jimmy runs, which has been, when I first got into Kava, I would go on the forums, look at all the reviews, all that stuff. So shout out to Jimmy for Kava forums. That's kind of like when the first initial resources out there. But we saw that there was no platform on social media or an audio, like so for podcast. And the podcasts that we did see that were on Kava, it looked like they had done a couple episodes and then stopped. So we thought it would be cool, like, hey, what if like because we already go through so much product as far as like trying the products out there. We're like, well, first of all, it might be cool just to get reviews out, right? To have a place where people can go see unbiased reviews of what we try, and then also have the audio piece, like the podcast, hearing us just like how you said, kind of bullshit, but actually kind of be serious too. Have Kava vendors on, have Kava bars on, and that's kind of what it turned into as a platform to kind of give those in the space a place to come and talk.
Yeah, and we just live a very health oriented lifestyle. We're very into fitness. I'm a personal trainer. Charles, I always say, is my OG trainer. Like he got me into fitness, and so it's hard to find people that live that lifestyle and to find people to connect with. So we just wanted to really open up people's eyes and spread the word more about the industry and what kava is, and that we're a great community of people who just are really fun to be around. And so we didn't have a big vision for it, but we love what it's kind of turned into, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I love that story so much because it just goes to show that you don't have to have it all figured out to start something. Like you can just have
Right.
fun,
No,
you can put it together. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And if you want it to be a big deal, I mean, like there's some extra things you can do, of course, but you know, just getting started is is key here. So
Yes.
I'm really curious if you guys, well, first off, how many episodes are you at this current moment?
I think we're almost at 75.
Yeah, I think
We should know. Like, I should know that off the top
no,
of
we
my
should
head.
know.
I'm gonna pull it up real quick. So
I want to say
pause.
73. I want to say 73.
Yeah, I want to say last one was 72. Yep, you're correct. So last one was 73. So we've done 73, which we try again. We had no vision, but our goal was to try and get like at least like one a week.
Yeah.
And we started in September of 2022. So a little bit over about like 18 months or so. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of the amount of episodes that we've been able to consistently pump out. And yeah.
That's a lot of conversations. That's a lot of time to put into really being thoughtful about this industry, which is why I think it's so cool to be able to dive more deeply in this conversation and take a little bit more of a look into the kava industry. I'm really curious of all these episodes and conversations you've had, is there like a moment or like a question that was answered that sticks out in your brain that you're just like, oh my God, would have had no idea about this if we didn't get on this podcast and talk about it right now?
Ooh, I kind of know mine.
Yes, go for it.
And this is actually, so there's some cool pieces about this episode too, as far as the connections that were made. And I won't name drop the kava bar that ended up using this person as a source. If they listen, they'll know who they are. But we had a episode, and it's for the number of it, but it was called Exploitations and Insights of a Fijian Kava Farmer with Sidiveni Suka, who is a Kava farmer. And he reached out to us. He found us on social media, got into contact with him, and he is a farmer out in Fiji who really wanted to give insight into the industry as far as like, hey, this is what the farmers actually go through at what they're doing. This is the process of the commerce, and this is where people are getting undercut in the industry. So this is where the farmers are actually getting undercut. Because you think about us here in the States, and a lot of people in the kava bar, and I've seen this, it's very frustrating. I've even seen people online, especially on Amazon, just leave very like ignorant reviews on kava because they don't know the process behind kava. First of all, it takes a very long time to grow. It's extremely hard work to grow kava plants. It takes years. And a lot of it's past generational as far as the knowledge to plant and to grow these and to take care of these plants. And it was just a very eye-opening episode conversation, kind of understanding again, like how much actually goes into farming. It's not like, a lot of the crops that we see here, I'm talking United States just because this is where we live. We have international listeners too. So I know it's a little different throughout the world, but a lot of our crops are on the yearly cycle. And I'm not saying it's a big deal if a farmer loses a crop for a year. It's a huge deal. It's a lot of money lost. But kava farmers, that crop takes a long, long time to produce. And it's a lot of hard work that goes into making the kava plant. So that's why in a lot of ways, like it really needs to be respected. So when people back here in the States, you'll see, they'll complain about the price of it. They'll say things like, "Oh, it tastes horrible" and things like that. And I'm never like drinking this like dirt water again. When they don't realize for that kava to have gotten here, for you to be able to consume that, it is a lot of work going back to the farmer and the people who cultivated that root that you're able to consume. Right. So it was a very eye-opening episode. And it was awesome because there's a kava bar who because of the episode, got in touch with Sidveni, actually went out to Fiji to meet him, started working with him and a few other people that through this episode were able to reach out with him directly and now use him as a source.
Yeah.
So just making that connection because of that episode
Wow.
It was like it was super like fulfilling. I don't know, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
awesome.
And so I just looked, and
Aw.
that is episode 40. And that was actually the one episode that we haven't done together. Because again, he is from Fiji, and it took a lot of back and forth to find a time that was going to work.
Yeah,
And I just happened to have work calls, so like it wasn't going to work for me to be on that interview. But I remember listening to it, and it was we were just very blessed to again be able to provide a platform
for
for
him.
these
Yeah,
farmers, for the industry, because and that's one thing that we talk about too, is we worry, you know, kava is growing in the United States, which is awesome, but we worry about the supply being able to keep up with that. And so it was really amazing to be able to get that voice and let people know, like how they can support them, why it costs how much it does, the process of being able to get that plant, to understand and respect, what you're drinking, and respect, what it took to get to you. So yeah, that was a really, really awesome
yeah.
one for sure.
And and going back to that too, I do want to say that kind of respect piece. Like I, I'm all about like people when they get the kava here in the United States, they can consume it how they want to. We make mocktails out of it, make seltzers, right? All these different drinks for consumption, um, which I think here is great, right? And it gives people an accessible way to drink kava because it can break that barrier of the taste, which I understand can be rough at first for some people. But kind of goes back to just the fact, like even like when you eat your food, right? You should be blessed to have healthy food, especially if you have access to healthy food, right? You should be happy. You should be thinking about where that food came from, the farm that it came from. If you're able to get it from, local place. The same thing with the kava. So a lot of people, at kava bars or consuming kava products, they just assume like, oh, it's just this random root. And it's like, no, like that has a very significant piece in culture out in the Pacific Islands and Polynesia. Um, and those farmers had to put generations of work
Yeah.
into raising those crops to now get over to where you can now consume it. So there is like, I think there needs to be like, just like an awareness, right? And I think that's what that episode brought. We got a lot of good feedback on the episode. A lot of people can't open their eyes and like, oh wow, how can I really get farm to table kava now? And how can we really support the farmers, right? So
Yeah, and
I
even
think,
like
yeah,
kava tenders and kava bars also really appreciated that episode, because again, like they just didn't realize. And it's one of those things. It's not to be mad or angry at people, but people don't know what they don't know. And so it was really great to be able to again just provide that platform and create that awareness.
yeah, one of my favorite
That's
episodes.
That's such a good episode, gem of an episode. I'll make sure to put the link to that one in the description of this video, or in the description of this episode, so that you guys can take a listen to it, because there's so much to learn here, and I really appreciate you guys for putting that out there. Because one thing that's really important to Tyler and I when we're going out and we're consulting for companies, or we're just having conversations with other people who are in the general, like, zoom out of kava industry for a second, just hang out in the like non-alcohol or like alcohol free space,
Yeah,
and there's this like divide right now. So there's this divide where, so I use Mocktails with Marina, and apparently I had no idea how controversial the word freaking Mocktails is right now. But to the side, to the
yeah,
non-sober side of the table of this conversation, like the people who still
mm-hmm.
drink alcohol, still do all that, but they don't want to hear any of our sobriety nonsense over here. Like they there's this perception that, oh, well, mocktails, it's not like a kitty cocktail. It's a real cocktail,
Yep.
even though there's no alcohol in it. But in the same breath, some of the same people on that side of the conversation, when I'm like, okay, well, what are the ingredient? Like, what are your active ingredients in these non-alcoholic spirits then? And they're not able to tell me anything about what's in their product. Or, for example, you can make a really bomb non-alcoholic gin, for example, but if it's not going to give you any sort of benefit, you're just going to trigger someone back into the whiskey tavern. Like,
Right,
Yeah,
it's
for
one of those
sure.
things where if you're not being intentional about what's in your cup, like, I mean, I'm not sitting here and judging what's in everybody's cup here, but I'm just saying, like,
No,
if we're
for
trying to
sure.
be thoughtful about this conversation and in this industry, and we're like, okay, well, what is in your cup if it's not alcohol? And people are starting to see and learn about kava because capsaicin in general is a very popular thing that's put in these like non-alcoholic spirits to make it feel like some sort of burn. But I'm like, dang, like they haven't figured out that kava would be a little bit better in here. But all of that being said, we know that kava and alcohol does not mix very well.
Nope.
So, in fact, it doesn't at all. It just makes you want to vom. So, I'm really curious because this is something that I'm having like it's a case by case navigation. I don't have any sort of like blanket statement at this point. But how do you feel about kava entering spaces that have like that aren't kava bars? Like, have you talked to any just like regular restaurant and bar owners that have kava on the menu? Or have you not encountered any yet? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I haven't encountered a ton. We have talked to like the Kava bar in Punta Gorda, which they're kind of like a coffee shop, and like they do sell like a lot of coffee and a lot of that stuff, but it's still called like a Kava bar. Like it's still, their primary focus. And yeah, so I personally, like, I haven't encountered that a ton. And I do think that would be really cool. I think that would be really awesome to, again, that's what our hope is, that kava down the road becomes more quote unquote mainstream, that it becomes like a household term. Everyone knows what alcohol is. Everyone knows what a beer is. It would be great if people just knew what kava was and it wasn't like this weird, awkward thing. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that would be awesome if just like regular restaurants or, a smoothie bar had like a kava option. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think the closest thing I've seen is, I forget the name of it, but we go down to the Gulf all the time from where we're at in Alabama, because it's only a 2.5 hour drive down, to Destin, Pensacola, Panama City, all that area. So we go down there a bunch, and surprisingly, they're that if anyone's looking to open the kava bar,
prime time. Like, there's nothing.
Oh my gosh, man! Like the Gulf, the Panhandle of Florida is prime. It is growing. It's busy. The most beautiful beaches. I've been to beaches in Japan, Europe, United States, and Destin is still probably, I think, some of the most beautiful beaches. And there's one kava bar in Pensacola, and there's one kava bar in Panama City, but it's in a smoke shop.
Yeah, it was like originally a smoke shop that they turned into a kava bar, and it's fine. Like, it's a great place to just kind of like go in, get a drink. Very nice, very clean. But it's not like when you think of a kava bar and like that kava bar vibe, it's not really that.
I mean, it's a cool spot. It's a cool spot, but like it's not what most people think of kava bar would think of. But there's one spot in Panama City that's a cafe.
Oh, right.
It's a cafe. They have like, breakfast, lunch, dinner, but they serve kratom and they serve kava. And last time we were down there, we called because we were asking what essentially they served. Not trying to throw them under the bus, but we know like kava and kratom, so like,
and you can tell they did not.
Yeah, so when I ask someone if they don't, it just makes me think too, like what's the quality of it, how's it being made, right? So it's kind of like we decided to stay away. We always bring our own kava, when we go somewhere. So but it was cool seeing a place, though, that, again, it was primarily a restaurant, cafe, but they did have kava and kratom on the menu, but it was very, very much an afterthought.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about that. So that's great that you bring that up, because then that is kind of worrisome, because, again, the person we were talking to had no idea what we were talking about. And I'm sure someone there did. They was probably busy. The person answering the phone just maybe didn't. But that is one thing, we talk about on our podcast all the time, is how important, the kava tenders are in really educating their consumers, because especially when it comes to like kratom, it can be dangerous for you to just be drinking that and not know what you're drinking. So although I do think it would be awesome if kava became more of a household name, I do think it would need to come with more education, and I would be nervous about stores or restaurants selling it and not being able to explain to their consumers what it was and what was happening to their body, as they were drinking it.
Wholeheartedly agree there.
Yeah. So I know, no, you can go.
And I was going to say too, like, I think it's one thing because, Kava is accessible. Like if you go to like Whole Foods or, a vitamin shop, Sprouts, depending on where you live, you can get Kava capsules and Kava tinctures, but those still aren't going to give you a lot of the effects that go in the Kava bar and having like a couple strong shells of a really good like Vanuatu Kava, right? It's going to be a different experience and effect. And that's kind of like what Heidi said, going back to the education piece, like just so people kind of know what they're consuming, how to consume it, right? Some of the effects, like, hey, you might not want to consume this on a completely full stomach because you won't get the same effects. If you're having a really sort of heady kava, you might not want that right before bed. Vice versa. If you're having a really heavy kava, you might not want that first thing in the morning because you might be sleepy the rest of the day. Might need a mid-afternoon nap, So just, education. And the nice thing about kava, it's very, very safe. Right. It's very, very safe. I'm not going to say there's no side effects, but there's minimal. And it's
like the biggest side effects you're going to have is maybe some GI discomfort and,
a few other things, your skin, if you drink it every day, you might get dry skin. And luckily the World Health Organization just put the study out about the liver toxicity. So let's put that myth to rest, seriously, because so many people reach out to us who we know are heavy alcohol consumers and they're worried about kava. And I'm like, you posted last week on social media, you out there like slamming shots.
Yeah.
And you're worried about what a plant's going to do to your body. Like,
and I'm sure you've heard it as well, but that's like the biggest thing we laugh about is they'll be like, well, I did a quick Google search and like, hold on, let me finish my wine. And this says that there's liver damage. I'm like, okay, you seem very concerned with that.
It's a really good point there. And, this thought came to my mind and I really wanted to talk about it with you guys because when Tyler and I were in St. Petersburg, Florida, just a couple weeks, or no, that was just a week ago. Wow. We went to this place called Moon Mountain. It's a brand new kava bar there. Well, at least the location that we went to was brand new. It was not on Google Maps. We walked across it. And when we walked in, it was this cool, like 80s space vibe. If there was a ski resort on the moon and these astronauts were like the skiers there. That's the aesthetic, literally.
Okay.
It was super cool and it was really well put together. I just kept looking around like, wow, this place is great. Like whoever designed it, it's great. But what was so interesting about them is they had kava, they had kratom, they had tea because my old lady Booty wanted chamomile tea. That's all I wanted to drink. I was not in the mood for kava and kratom at the moment. When we were there, it was rainy. I just wanted to be warm.
Sure.
I wanted a bunch of I wanted to make sure there was honey in there. So, I was being a little picky about it. And then as I'm going through the menu, I'm like, but also, wait a second, is that beer on tap? And then as we're waiting for the drinks to be made, and by the way, very well executed drinks, like they were delicious. They were perfectly dosed. They also, Tyler is incredibly sensitive to kratom. He is really good at being like the taste tester to see like, hey, is that a crappy extract in there? Or like, is that, yeah. And so we were having a great time with the whole experience. And I was like, oh my God. And it was rowdy outside because we had gone to this kava bar right after a wedding. That's what it was. So we were coming back from my friend's wedding. And so all the college kids were partying so hard outside to the point where I was like, oh my God, like we need to get back to our Airbnb.
Yeah, man, that's not my vibe.
I'm over it. But when we ducked into this kava bar, even though it had all of those things, we instantly noticed everybody hanging out in there was the chill, right vibe. We were sitting in there, and even though it was raining and there was a bunch of crazy people outside, it was very just like very soothing and relaxing. And then we see these cops come in and we're like, oh, did something crazy happen? Nope, that's just their favorite place to order drinks too.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this is like in my head, because I had my experience of working at a kava bar in Arizona. Now I'm in Nevada. And so I'm very like west side of the country on everything. So we don't have very many kava bars or anything. I had no expectations really. I had no idea.
Okay.
I had nothing other than a lot of really great ideas in my head that I wanted to see how they were executed and to see that honestly, it really comes down to the operations. If the
Yeah.
operations of their business can responsibly and effectively manage all of these really cool things, you can have it all. You really can have it all. This place proved it to me, and they really like it was very well cleaned, really well kept. Like there was so many positives about it. And I mention all these things because I've also seen kava bars that the design looks great. Like the concept is nice. Like I could see what they were going for, but you can tell kava tenders aren't educating. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't know that I'm in kava industry when I walk in the door. I never give it away. I'm not the kind of person that walks in the
Same,
door and goes,
same.
boom,
Yeah,
hi, I was
I
chief
always act like
operations
I know,
officer. Yeah.
Yeah.
man. Well, so I am
Well, hold
curious.
on real quick. I want to write that down. What was that called? Because that does sound awesome.
Yeah,
What was it called again?
That one's Moon Mountain.
Moon
Moon Mountain. Okay,
Mountain.
and you said they serve so Kava Kratom. They had teas there, but they also have
They had
alcohol.
beer. Yeah, they had alcohol.
Now,
They
Curious, just beer. Okay.
I
did
think
you
I only
ask
saw beer.
about like, did you try and kind of test them? Not test them, but did they say like not to mix at all? Or did you not kind of tackle that in any way? Like, did you ask them like about the alcohol and the kava?
I love that question. So I honestly didn't because Tyler and I don't drink at all. But what
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
noticed was, and now I'm going to start asking that because it's a really great point. But I noticed that when Tyler was ordering his kratom and he was being very specific that he wanted a double red, like because that
Mhm.
was the one stop. We didn't want to go back because our flight was really early in the morning. And so he was trying to order, and they were being very like to the detail. Okay, this is how it'll change the taste of what you're drinking. Like
Oh,
Nice.
and then
wow.
even when I
So
was just ordering my little chamomile tea, they were even giving me information. Okay, so it'll take this long to steep, and then it's good for
Okay.
this, and here's some honey. And we went there twice. We went there the night of the wedding, and then we went there, I think the night before when we were just walking around. And I both experiences were the same in the sense that even though they were different like servers, they both gave that exact same experience. So I
that's
that's
awesome.
what led me to believe that it was like an intentional operational decision that was
Yeah.
made in the company, which was really cool to see.
That is very cool. I added them. I wrote that down because that would be a great company to interview. Yeah, that's really cool, and that is
Um,
cool to see that there is the alcohol. I would just be interested to know like how they approach that with customers who maybe try and order both, if they like have rules or anything on that.
and I can see like being very objective. Kind of taking myself out of like my initial kind of thoughts I had on that is I guess like if you want, you talk about kind of inclusivity as far as like getting together with people and everything. So I can understand, someone who doesn't drink kratom, doesn't drink kava, but they want to go out with like their friends who choose
Yeah,
to abstain from alcohol, going to a place where they still have an option.
absolutely.
So I can see that, piece versus like, if I were going to go to an alcohol bar with friends, I don't drink alcohol, but
So
vice versa, what if they offered sober options, like what if they offer kava or a kratom, right?
yeah,
So I
man,
know
this
I
is
could
this
kind
is
of like,
yeah, my brain is like turning now. I
Back and
feel like
forth, right?
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
like
like,
that's such a cool concept. Because that really, I didn't really think about it that way, but that's so true. Like being able to bridge that gap between the sober movement and the not sober movement. Like you
Hmm.
don't have to be one or the other. It's not like because I choose not to drink alcohol, because that's kind of why we got into. We didn't really give that history, but Charles is in the military, and alcohol is huge in the military, and
yeah,
it just didn't fit our lifestyle. Fitness is our lifestyle, just waking up early with your kids, that's our lifestyle, and alcohol doesn't mix with that. And so that's kind of what we were looking for, is that alcohol alternative to still have that social lubrication, still hang out with people, but have something else. So I love the idea of we need to make more of these locations that have both. That'd be cool.
Yeah, no, I'm still like stuck on this right now. I
I
don't know.
know.
Like,
I go back and forth too. And the one phrase that keeps ringing in my head, because I grew up in Wisconsin, middle school, high school, and college. And, you learn before you learn how to drive, you learn that beer before liquor makes you sicker.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, if I could learn that before I learned how to drive, I could probably figure out that I can't have kava and alcohol in the same night. It just takes one night.
We need to make a rhyme. We need to make a
Right?
rhyme for this. Because
yeah,
you're right. Beer before liquor, never been sicker, but liquor before beer, you're in the
Yep. There's got to be
that's
a
so
kava
cool.
equivalent. There's some
clear.
marketing
We'll
team
work
out
on this.
there.
No,
Yeah.
we're gonna. I will this afternoon. I want to look into that kava bar. It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that's
So
awesome. We have a lot of family in Florida, like extended family. That's where like both my mom and my dad's side all have family, and surprisingly, like a lot of them haven't heard of kava. And I'm like, you're in the Mecca because they're
yeah,
all in
the
the St.
Mecca.
Petersburg area, and I'm like,
What?
you're in the Mecca.
I
Like,
know.
how
How could
have
you
you
not
not heard
see
of
it?
it?
It's all over Central Ave. There's like
I know.
five. Like,
Right. And so, yeah, that was another big thing when we started this. I had like aunts and cousins, and they're like, what's kava? I'm like, how do you not know? Like, you're in the homeland.
Which I think goes to show that the the market and just the opportunity to introduce kava to people is there.
Yeah.
Like it's I think while like when you're in it and kind of looking at it, like it's like, oh, everyone knows kava, but like you're in the space, right?
You're looking for it.
And you step out of the box and you're like, oh, this is such a tiny portion of the population of who actually knows what kava is, right? So like the opportunity is out there, and I mean, you can look at the statistics for kava bars, how they've just exploded
oh
over the
yeah.
past decade, really, and it's almost like there's still so much room for some more. Like even just talking about the panhandle of Florida, Florida itself is the mecca of kava bars. When you look at, per capita, how many there are. But even Florida, there's still areas where it's like, dude, you can get 20 more kava bars in here in this area,
Oh
and
yeah.
it'd be a market for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting though. There are more that you kind of to your previous question about things that we learned that we wouldn't have known. And I think in some more recent interviews, we've learned about how much more like regulations are being put in place and how much
Mm-hmm.
more we've always known that kratom has been, the hot topic and people have wanted to, argue about it, whatever. But now kava is becoming, on the hot spot, and there's more. I think you mentioned in Arizona as well. Like there's more rules coming about, which is kind of concerning, just because they seem like they don't make any sense. And
Yeah.
again, it seems like these people are making these rules who don't really know what kava is, and they're just kind of making those. So I'd love for you to just kind of talk a little bit more about the Arizona one because that was new for us.
Yeah, and this one's super crazy because so I need to tell a story to tell the full
Sure.
background
Yes.
of it because basically what happened in Maricopa County, Arizona. So not all of Arizona, just the one county that Phoenix is in.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, early 2023, they randomly decided that kava was not considered a GROS approved supplement.
Mm.
GROS approved meaning generally regarded as safe.
Yep.
And this is a load of garbage for so many reasons. And my personal theory is that there was some sort of lobbyist going in and causing some ruckus because the definition of being a GROS approved supplement is yes, there's all of these categorizations, but if you are talking about an ingredient that has been in regular use since before 1950, somewhere in the 1950s, I'm blanking on the year, then you are grandfathered in. And
Yeah.
kava has been known to be around for thousands of years and has never been known to be this big source of death in any way, shape, or form, ever, ever. There are so many more harmful things that are considered GROS approved. So that made this a little complicated. So when we originally heard about it, this is when I was still chief operations officer at Lacuna, and we were in the process of moving one, like our location on 3rd Street, we were just moving it 2 blocks down the street. So even though the business has been around for almost 5 years at this point, 4 years last year, right? We were technically grandfathered in as like a company, but the moment you move your company's physical address, all of a sudden the grandfathering clause disappears.
Interesting.
What?
So
Yeah.
it was such garbage. It was all a tornado, earthquake, all happening at the same time. So basically what we learned through that process though was you could still serve kava in Maricopa County. It just needs to be, it can only be like suspended in water, so basically brewed the traditional way,
Right.
and must be served like on the side. So you can't mix it in a mocktail anymore. You can't do anything other than that. And when you're serving it, you just have to make sure that you have like that your consumers are very aware of the dosage, which every menu I've ever made, I've always included dosages, whether a law told me to or not, because I just think that's the responsible thing to do. But
Yeah,
that all
for sure.
being said, so right now in Phoenix, you can serve, it makes it honestly more fun for a kava tender, in my opinion, because now you can use all these cool glasses. You just serve kava on the side. And then if you want to turn it into a mocktail, if you're the customer on the receiving end, you can either choose to just down your kava shot, down your kava cup, however you want to take it, or you can put it into your like mixed drink on the side. It's
Yeah,
only
yeah.
the server that can't. So it's a very particular law. And even though I really want to do a lot more interviewing and seeing who will talk to me on the inside to get to the
Yeah.
answers, so I'm
Yeah.
not just out here speculating like an asshole without enough information. But like I genuinely believe that there's always like it's not like everybody's like, oh, down like government conspiracy everywhere. I think that there's just a lack of education. And
Agreed.
the thing is there are people who are serving kava in a really dumb way where they're not giving the correct dosages. They're not even informing people of their dosages. So if and if they have like, for example, if you have to like if there's a bar that has a rule where you have to get at least one drink every hour in order to hang out, but then your drinks are super strong and someone hung out for 3 hours, they may not be able to honestly drive if you are really putting that much in their body that quickly and not allowing any food service or anything, for example. That is the
I know a
perfect
bar that is.
storm. Yep, that is the perfect storm for Kava being attacked and being regulated
For
in a way
sure.
that it doesn't need, that could all be negated if we all just educated as Kava tenders. And I will say one story that pops into my head because I never like I've never had that experience serving kava in the years that I was behind the bar or had people, behind my bar. Like I've never had a situation where someone was just came in, just had kava and couldn't have their wits about them. The one and only time that a very like kind of scary thing happened where like Tyler legit saved someone's life. This kid came in, was already on drugs, was already drinking,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I very specifically did not serve him, but one of his rude friends decided to try to be sneaky and put kava in his body anyway. Literally went outside around the corner, like all of this to make just to I don't know what the intention was, but all I
Yeah.
know is I was behind the bar, Tyler was outside, and then he like saw the kid, he was like kind of like swerving and because for those of you who don't know, downtown Phoenix is right where the ASU campus is. So there's a lot of people who do party pretty hard over there. There are literal dumpster fires that occur in that part of town. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
We grew up there, so yeah, we know.
Yeah. So with all this being said, he almost like he started to pass out and then he would have like basically curb stomped himself. And Tyler
Oh my
caught his
gosh.
head and like pulled him to the
Gosh.
side. And then his friends were like, quick, we got to get out of here. So, point of the whole story is we know that there were other things that were occurring. Like, it was all happening so fast because, again, downtown, Friday night, slamming, like, I mean, it's so busy in there that, like, you can't see all the things that are happening. But then there's that one that slips through the crack. That is the one and only time I've ever seen Kava do the big scary that people claimed. And I
Yeah.
don't even blame Kava for
That
that
would.
because it was all the
Yeah.
drugs beforehand. And then honestly, and this is where I don't know, this is not a scientific fact, but I believe that Kava, like looks out for you in the sense that if you do drink it with alcohol, it's going to make you vom. Like you'll vom
Yeah. And quickly.
and quickly. And I think that it's
Yeah.
trying to honestly detox you in that way. Like it's trying to be like, get out. This is not grounding. This is not good for you. So, you know, I don't think kava was the thing. I think kava started to help that kid purge. Um,
Yeah, and I would even like, I mean,
It's frustrating.
I'd be curious, like the thought process. I mean, there probably was no thought process with his friends, but why they would go to Lacuna and get kava and give it to this guy.
right.
Like
Yeah.
they probably even thought it was like kratom or something. I bet, or I don't know. I'm speculating.
Either way though, and
But
that's kind of the issue when you look up, when you do your Google searching for both kratom and kava, all these situations, especially with kratom being demonized, it's always because someone else had something else in their system. It's because they had a multitude of things in their system, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and mixing it all together. And then, of course, the kava or the kratom is what is claimed to be the issue. And it's like, no, like you said, that was letting that person know you done fucked up. Like you need to get this shit out of your body.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like, for people listening, I mean, even if you drink a lot, like we'll talk about like kava right now specifically. What I like about kava too, kind of like you said, like it's very, I think it kind of makes you self-aware in the sense that if you drink too much kava, you can't really get past it because you're getting nauseous. You're not going to feel good, so it's not going to let you, you know, quote unquote. You think of like alcohol, right? You can get blacked out.
You can get alcohol poisoning.
You can keep on drinking after that blackout, and you could literally die. Kava doesn't let you get there. You're going to feel nauseous beforehand. It's going to make you stop drinking it. Kava is going to, like, it's very, very cool. Like I hate saying this, but when I tell people about kava, I feel like I'm being like a salesman, even though I'm not selling it. You know,
no,
like,
I feel you.
It's a miracle.
It's
like,
a miracle.
But like,
it's not a witch oil.
But it's so cool in the sense that like it's very, like, again, self-aware. You can drink it, and like you know when you've had enough. You're at your point. Like for me, like there's a kava that we're testing right now, and it's super potent. It's a very, very potent kava, and it's a little bit more heady, so it's a little bit more daytime-ish. And I know after 2 shells of that, like I don't need any more. Like it's perfect spot. I know I don't need to go and chase a third shell because it's not going to give me any more effects than I have right now. That would be good.
You know? Yeah, and we're obviously, you know, part of Kava and Kettlebells is just exploring the benefits of all botanicals, not just kava, to that healthy lifestyle. And we really are just so, I feel like these plants are on earth for a reason. Yeah. You know, when you think about life before modern medicine, that's what plants were used for. Like all plants, whether it's, you know, marijuana or chamomile, like everything is on this earth for a reason. And so it's really frustrating to see them demonize so much, yet alcohol and drugs and pharma be just like put on a pedestal as that's the answer. That's what people turn to as the answer for everything. And it's like, no, like these are they can be such a blessing. Just don't abuse it and mix it with the other non-blessings.
It's such a good point because as we're saying, kava does something, it does something a little bit deeper than I think that is ever advertised. Like no kava tender, I think, could even put this in a spiel unless they're like slow and can have like a half hour to dive deep with someone.
Right.
Where it's like, so when I first found kava, I was about a year and a half into not drinking, but I had like abused psychedelics like over the quarantine time, especially. I mean, I was like I lived in the live entertainment capital of the world. That was my job. Like, if there was anyone that was affected, like the entire city of Las Vegas, like, there's nothing else. Like, we were all like, it was scary. Going into a farmer's market, there were guns. Like, not, I mean, I'm pro A, but what I'm saying is, like, people were being very aggressive about it and literally threatening people. And it was so kind of scary and scarce here that I honestly just wasn't even like, I was like, bye, I'm going to Arizona. And And through this whole thing, I was like I was on my like healing journey, right? And I, so I was looking for something to like basically replace a habit instead of
Yep.
just breaking it all together. And so
Yeah.
when I found Kava, because I had a lot of like I had panic disorder. I have not had a panic attack in a very long time, thanks to Kava. And you know, through that, I always liked pushing things a little bit more. I would always be like, okay, well, I stopped drinking, but I still want to feel something. And then the
Yeah.
kava taught me that just because you're sober from one thing, that doesn't mean that you've like done the work, right? Kava
Right.
forced me to like finally really just sit down and say, there is no more running. I can't keep drinking kava. It's gonna like, because I will puke. So I need to just sit with myself and be okay and stop chasing a feeling. And then it started to, doing the 6 o'clock slam every day. I would always, anytime I had the night shift, I'd always lead everybody in a bula, a cheers to, kind of just an intentional moment where we all come together and try to do something nice for ourselves. And through that consistent, repeated action, I I had finally broken the habit of like just wanting to just feel something so much. Like all of a sudden now sober is like its own drug. It sounds so lame. Like if 12-year-old me heard that, but it's true. And that's
Yeah.
what kava
Yeah. I
really
mean,
like brings. It's awesome.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love how you phrased not chasing the feeling too. That is so huge. And I think so important. And I think anyone in recovery would tell you that just because you're not doing something anymore, it doesn't mean that the problem is solved. And like you have to really get down to it. So that was awesome. I love that.
and I also think too, like with Kava, and you think with like any a lot of times people like will use substances because they want to have like a head change, right? They want to feel different, right? People drink to relax, to get have fun, whatever. People will smoke cannabis, right? To have a head change, psychedelics, anything like even caffeine, right? Caffeine is very very specific with how it affects your mood and things it does in the body. So drinking a cup of coffee, right? People don't realize has very drug-like interactions in the body that's going to change your thinking. Like there's literally a study like caffeine is one of the most
It's the
studied
most abused
drugs.
drug. Yeah.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but like a certain threshold of caffeine has been shown to impair judgment, make you more irrational, all these things, right? So any substance can have an effect. But what I like about kava is, after drinking it for a very long time, why I think we like it so much, and in a lot of ways I think it benefits your relationship. And we also did an episode on kava and sex life, how it's very like enhancing for your sex life because other things kind of take you out of the world. People will use it to escape, right? um like even like a really strong cannabis, man, people, I mean, especially these days, the cannabis out there, like it's a lot different.
It's potent.
It's very very
It's
potent,
Oh
right?
yeah.
unpredictable.
It can take you
Very
to a very different
unpredictable.
place. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those Delta 8 gummies especially, right? uh, in theory, right? Because I'm not allowed to smoke
Right.
cannabis,
I
but
can though. And yeah.
yeah. But what's cool about kava is it's hard to explain to people who hasn't really tried it and used it, but it puts you in a different spot, but you're present, and I think it accentuates your life in whatever experience that you're having. And what we really like about it is, again, like we can drink it together. I'm not out of my head. I'm not in my headspace. I'm not high. I'm not drunk, right? I'm feeling good. I have a little bit of a head change, but it's enhancing my experience, and it's enhancing my time with Heidi, or even like
Yeah.
with a family, right? With my girls. Like I can be a dad. I can be with my girls having an awesome time, and
And
Kava
remember
Cav,
it.
yeah, and Kava Cav, chills you out, but I remember it. I'm present. I'm there, and it's
I think it really pulls you and forces you to be present because it
yeah,
is so easy. We are so bombarded in today's society with just stimulation. Like they've done studies that it's hard for people. Our brains have been so adapted to technology and the constant swiping that it is hard for the average brain to just sit there and and because we're just bombarded with that constant stimulus. And I do feel like it really is hard to explain if you haven't done it, but if you have, you'll understand that it just really forces you to slow down and be present. It like forces you to be present and intentional about everything around you and open up that communication, which again is like hard to explain, but it does. Like it forces you to be present with your mind and talking, and I feel like it pulls your inner you out and like, yeah.
I agree. I think so.
I love that you guys are saying this, because, you know, when I was waking up this morning and talking to my husband, I was talking to him about like, okay, so obviously consulting for business operations, both in the Kava industry and not. And, you know, old me back in the day, because I used to be a coach in a different kind of like dancing and like kind of helping people become professional dancers and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not that I haven't coached before or had to like go find sales leads and like do all these things. And back then I was very pushy and I was like, I can help you. Let me do this. Let me just tell you. Let me just give you 5 minutes. And nowadays I am like, if you don't want to give me a moment to talk, if you're not going to ask me a question and give me space, if you're going to interrupt me, first off, you've probably never had kava. I can tell. Number two, it has completely changed the way that, like, I will literally have the best boundaries on planet Earth nowadays. And now I know how to avoid having those energy suckers who just waste your time. I was always annoyed by that back in the day. I was like, why does everyone want to waste my time when I'm like letting people and I'm wasting their time because I'm not filtering? Kava is the best filter. And I find that when I'm talking to people in business who are actually in the lifestyle of kava, they don't just own a kava bar or something, you can tell because that spaciousness is there. And then, you know, for example, me and Tyler will be talking to them and then we're like, oh, that was a business meeting that was only scheduled to be an hour, but we've been hanging out for like 5 now. Now we all need to order food because we're so hungry. And that only happens, and I can tell, you know, success comes for the people who have patience and the space to actually do said business. If you're one of the people, especially, I know a lot of people follow me who are neurodivergent because I'm very open with my neurodivergence and how I've worked incredibly hard to calm it as much as possible in such a stimulating world. And Kava is always and will forever be the number one tool I recommend for that. And number two, you know, if you're trying to have a conversation where you're even trying to ask for help, or you're like, why is the world against me? You won't even be able to calm down enough to see those opportunities if you're so high strung. And so that to me is the magic of kava. Kava, like the world is always a magical place. It is full of miracles. They're around every corner. There's opportunity for literally everyone everywhere. I wholeheartedly believe that. I don't care where you were born on planet Earth. There is something somewhere. Always. And if you're high strung or you're stuck in that fight or flight mode, it becomes really hard to see it. So kava really helps you kind of take those lenses off and allows you to like be able to see and, you know, take advantage of those opportunities and actually connect with people instead of shy away from it. And that to me is like why I will forever just be the biggest advocate for kava.
Yes, that was perfectly said.
You.
Absolutely. It really is just like a great, just social, just helps people. It's just great. There's just nothing bad about it. But that was interesting what you said about neurodivergent, and I never thought of this. It's like we believe our youngest, we think she is definitely neurodivergent in many ways, and she loves kava, and our oldest doesn't. Which is fine. Like, that's okay. I mean, they're kids. It's not like we're slinging kava all the time.
Disclaimer too, like, you know, yes, if you're under 18, as per a lot of the products say, don't consume kava.
Of course.
But if you look traditionally back to how it's been used for centuries, where it came from, again, in Polynesia and the Pacific Islands, younger people would drink kava, and that's just part of the culture.
Right.
So that's a disclaimer,
yes,
I guess.
Yes. But I never thought about that. But yeah, she she's very overwhelmed too with like sensory wise, and when things get like loud and there's just too many people. So I never thought of that, but that makes perfect sense why she is drawn more to Kava. Yeah, man,
Oh
it
yeah.
just opened my eyes.
And
It
what's cool
is.
too,
Go ahead. I want to hear.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, what's cool, like, and again, people can, do like obviously like do your research like as much as you can. There's uh articles, there's studies set upon studies on Kava. There's a lot of studies out there, but there's a lot of avenues for it to be used for, and be careful talking about mental health, because I understand that everyone's situation is different, and you should obviously consult with your medical provider first. But with that being said, this is our opinion. Um, and with a lot of people that we talk to, so a lot of anecdotal reports, right? But a I have heard more people use Kava successfully to help with issues opposed to pretty much any other plant besides psychedelic therapy in a clinical setting, right? Being guided through something, having breakthroughs, right? So as far as something that you can, consume at home, we have heard the most success through different facets of mental health, people consuming Kava and being able to
Find some relief.
live a better life.
Yeah.
Versus any other plant out there.
Absolutely. And, bringing this back to that huge overview context of not just kava industry, but just general non-alcoholic, and where that education is key, you know, this is where I find, like, when I'm just like getting to know leads, like trying to see like, okay, like, can I help you or not? Like, is this something? The people who, again, have never had kava but probably need it, and they're honestly not even that interested in what's in the recipes. They just know that it's good for business and it's a wave. I still give them credit because it's a good wave to ride. Everybody can ride this wave. I'm down for it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
care I don't care if you're a poser or not, because if you're a poser, maybe you might accidentally try it and accidentally like it and accidentally learn
Yeah.
something. So everybody can come sit with us for sure. I will say, you know, when it comes to that mental health component, I, I made a huge blog about this one time because I'm gonna spill some tea for a second. I haven't
Yeah.
spilled much tea on this podcast yet. But one time when I was, working at Lacuna, I had a situation where I had to ban someone because he was being in a way that like basically made a lot of people incredibly uncomfortable, and like so uncomfortable, but he was like kind of trying to blame it on being autistic. And I'm on the spectrum, so you can't come at me and say that kind of thing when I know that there's a difference, and there I can tell there, like, when someone's trying to like use something to make others feel some type of way. I wasn't having it in the bar, and I didn't want anyone else
Yeah.
touched. I was just like, you're gone. So this person wrote the longest, nastiest review I've ever had in my life. My name's all over it. They called the health department, tried to say all these things. So I had to go through the professional ringer because of this. And I stood behind it so firmly, I even doubled down and made a whole blog post about it.
Wait,
I
so
love it.
this was a review on
I believe it was, yeah, it was a review that happened on, I believe it was on Google. Was it
Gotcha.
Google or
Okay.
Yelp? I believe it was on Google, yes. It's probably still there. I don't know. Go ahead and have fun looking at it. But point of the whole story is, there was a lot of conversation at that point about, oh, well, how am I supposed to be in the space? Where's my safe space then? So
Gotcha.
my opinion is that, you know, the coolest thing about a kava bar is you have more in common if you're walking into the kava bar on the first day of being sober and you're like 35, right? You're just like a 21-year-old that just turned 21, right? I don't know if I was just like a nerd or something, but the first time I walked in a bar, I was like, so where do I order? Like, how does this work? Right? Like, you don't know at first because you've never
Right, yeah.
experienced it.
True.
And so once you start to experience things more, then you're like, okay, now I understand it. And your anxiety level decreases a little bit, right? So the same thing happens with freshly sober people. They have more in common with neurodivergent people than anyone else because they have no idea how to operate in a space because they're usually drunk. They're usually impaired. So now they're
Yeah, it
like a
Right.
makes
kid all
sense.
over again. So I always talked about in my staff meetings, I'd always say, hey guys, we have to help people be people, whether they're neurodivergent, whether they're freshly sober, whether they've never been here before, because no one's ever been to a kava bar before. We're always people's first. So, you know, you're gonna get a wide variety of people not knowing how to be people. They're gonna be awkward and weird for a second, and you just gotta help them learn how to flow. So it's about, not only the conversations kava tenders are having, but how the operation is set up with, okay, does the menu have information? Are there signs in your establishment that says how you exist in it? Are there these events that support that kind of, that that perspective? And so I bring all of this up and I bring that crazy review up because I stand very firmly behind, like, you know, a lot of times I feel like conversations can start to become a little taboo. Even our industry is too tiny to the point where, like, even sometimes we'll even try to eat ourselves alive. We're like, oh well, we don't want to ruin kava for someone else, so we have to say it in this politically correct way to make sure that things are good.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I find that if I would have done that, I would have allowed more people to have been put into bad situations, and I would have just allowed more people to feel uncomfortable and awkward. So, I just took it upon myself and our team to be able to teach people the right way. And whether that caused, some hurt feelings or not, at the end of the day, um, I want to make sure everybody's safe. And we had record breaking month after month after month. Like all of 23 was
I love
literally
it.
record breaking sales day after day. So, point of this
Nice.
whole story is, when you just run a business that's just like, here's some kava, done, that's it, then there's some. I don't feel like the kava's been working. Just drink it a little bit longer and see, how to help other people. And I feel like that's the coolest thing. And one of the last kind of questions I want to frame for you guys for wrapping this whole thing up is, it's like, there really is a difference when you get to connect and meet with people, through drinking kava. And you know I would just love to hear, through all of it, all the years, what was I would love to hear a story of, like, when did you walk into a kava bar, or maybe it wasn't a kava bar, but you're sharing kava with someone and you're like, okay, like, we're kind of sitting next to each other, but we'd never be friends, or we would have never met if it wasn't for this drink in this context. I would love to hear a story, from each of you, what that magical cup of kava story is.
Yeah, something just kind of immediately came into my mind. But so to be honest, we haven't been in a ton of kava bars just because in Arizona there was one kava bar in Tucson. We had been to a few in Phoenix when we would visit. And then we're in Alabama and there isn't any kava bars here, which people always laugh that we have our podcast and we don't have kava bars here. That being said, when we were in Tucson, the one kava bar called the Kava Bar, and
Which shout out to them. So the Kava Bar Tucson, they just opened their location in downtown Tucson.
oh yeah,
So 2 locations in Tucson now. The owners are awesome people, and that was our hometown Kava Bar for like almost 4 years.
yeah.
So shout out to them.
So yeah, and so I think every time we went in there, we would talk to people, but there was the one guy specifically. He had been in there a couple times, and we would kind of chit chat a little bit, and then one time we just were in, got a drink, kind of said hi and left, and then we came in a second time and we're sitting talking more. And of course, like, he just struck up a conversation with him because that's what happens in a kava bar. You just talk. And we found out that, like, he was prior military and he was doing so much cool stuff. And I just remember we sat there and talked to him for a long time and realized that we had a lot more in common. And it was just like, we were about to move, but it was like a really cool network to be able to meet, and we had great conversation, and
Yeah, I think it's hard to pinpoint like certain conversations because you know actually kind of think about it now, we've actually been to a decent amount of Kava bars. You know, and I kind of think about like the Kava bar. When I think about like my Kava bar, it's kind of the Kava bar Tucson that we were at. We went to a lot of times. Um, I I'm not going to say one instance, but I have a lot of good memories there because we would bring our girls there. So like again, the owners. So if you're in the Tucson area or if you're in Phoenix, listening to this, please make a trip down to the Kava Bar Tucson because it's a really awesome place. Again, it's family run. It's a husband and wife owner. They got kids too, and it's just a really cool bar. I really like it. But we would bring our girls there all the time.
To the point, like our daughter on her 5th birthday requested, because we don't do a ton of birthday parties. We didn't do a birthday party that year, and we're like, well, what do you want to do on your birthday? And she goes, well, can we bring my presents to the Kava Bar and just like hang out there? And we're like,
Aww.
absolutely.
So like she would go there and stuff, and I just have a lot of good memories from that. Like because I look back at, because we've kind of moved around a bit, and we always look back at like where we moved as kind of like a period of our life, and we're always like, oh, remember like when we lived in like Nebraska, and we look back at those years, and it's a period of our life, and like we look back at living in like Tucson as a period of our life, and Tucson for us was kind of like a crazy time. Like we got in a when we first moved out there, we got in a car accident that like literally almost killed us. Like Heidi was like horrible TBI. Her brain was bleeding multiple places. Ended up being in the hospital for like 4 weeks. I like literally was told that she would never, like the doctors told me that she would never like know who I was again, never be a mom again, never be able to walk again.
I mean, I could walk, but like,
but like never like.
So that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's the whole. I will get into
basically that. Like I didn't remember. Like I kind of remembered like my parents, my family, but I didn't remember Charles. I didn't remember our girls. I don't even remember the accident. I don't remember the first like week or two after. So that's what he's talking about.
But, so we got a really bad accident. That I had my last deployment overseas, and when I was in Tucson, and that deployment was like it was horrible. It was really bad deployment. So I was in Afghanistan right as we were closing up operations. So actually, my last week there was actually when the whole peace agreement was, made. But a couple months lead up to that, it was a lot. Really, I guess like hot and heavy, as you can see, say or whatever. So there was like a lot of like trauma in Tucson, but that's also when we really got more into Kava. So we drank more Kava. And I remember after that deployment coming back, like COVID hit.
Like literally 5 days after he got home, things were shut down.
I was stuck in Spain, and they were shutting down all the international travel, and I was able to get back to the States. Being stuck in Spain wasn't bad for a couple of days, but like coming back, and it was weird because like for me, like after being overseas, when you come back home and integrate, it's always kind of hard. And then when you're like stuck in quarantine with your family, I know this sounds really bad.
No, it was.
But like
it was hard.
You're coming from somewhere where it's like you're 0 to 100 all the time, and you come back to just like civilian life where it's like there's nothing going on, if that makes sense. Like there's no like threats or anything, so you're just kind of like,
well, that plus with COVID,
yeah, and like
you were stuck, like
we were stuck together.
There was nowhere for you to go to like get that escape.
Yeah, and it was a weird time, but we started drinking a lot of Kava during that time, and I feel like that's like, I don't know, when we found out like really how
helpful it was,
how helpful that plant can be.
You through that, and
and this is like totally off a tangent of what you asked, but it just made me think about that because we're talking about the Kava bar, and the Kava bar opened up again after COVID because Arizona was a little bit looser with restrictions eventually. Pima County, not so much as Maricopa County was, but we started going to the Kava bar, and it was cool. Like it was a spot we could bring our girls there and everything. We always had good conversations. We brought our friends there. We brought multiple different friends to that bar and introduced them to Kava. And it's hard to pinpoint a certain conversation, but like, I guess it's like a period of my life I look back on, and Kava was a big piece of that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. That was a very roundabout answer to your question.
I loved it.
No, I loved it too. Thank you so much for your service, by the way. I come from a military family and I know that it's so hard. You do so much for the country, so we really appreciate you.
I appreciate it. I'm getting out soon, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
July, we're done with it.
But it's been good.
Nice. And I love that you answered that from a perspective of just like a place full of conversations because, anybody who's spent any time in kava bars long term understands that, yeah, you really get to develop this like weaved connection, like network that, a lot of people feel starved from connection nowadays and they don't know. And they're like, oh, well, I'll go out, I'll go to the bar, maybe I'll meet someone. And it doesn't work out the way they intended because it's alcohol as the social lubricant
Yeah.
instead of kava. And, PSA, everybody out there, if you want to feel more connected, you want to find a community that, you know, is actually aware and listens and talks and like, just is open and alive, like go to a kava bar, hang out. It doesn't always happen instantly. You can't just take one sip and be like, "All right, where's all my new best friends?" Like it takes a moment. Like you might want to just bring a journal at first, bring maybe a coloring book, just maybe some work, and it slowly starts to happen with time. Like, oh, can I borrow that charger? Oh, excuse me, can I put that cord by your feet? Oh, what are you working on, friend? That looks cool. Oh, you're also really super into airplanes. Oh my God, cool. Now we're best friends. And now, life, maybe they're your new business partner. I've seen that happen a lot of times. Oh my goodness, so many businesses start
Oh
in kava
yeah.
bars. So, thank you so much for sharing that story. And thank you both for sharing all of your stories today because I feel like, this has only scratched the surface. We could have conversations for a million hours here and still not get to the bottom of kava, but I appreciate you guys for starting the conversation here with me and throughout
Absolutely.
your podcast. That is, again, it's a resource that multiple people use in ways that you may never ever get to hear about, but it's really helping the world in a really positive way. So thank you guys so much for that and all of your time with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been amazing. We always have great conversations with you. So this has been great, and I definitely can't wait to do this again.
Yeah,
Yay.
no, we appreciate the time today.
Final question though, real quick. Do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about or anything you want to plug?
I don't think so. You can follow us on, if you want to follow our podcast, it is Kava and Kettlebells. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever platform you listen to. And then you can follow us on Instagram at Kava_Kettlebells. And we also have a website, which is
It's just Kava Kettlebells, and that's literally just
.net.
.net. Yeah. Again, like we don't
sell
anything. It's just reviews, podcasts. The website, like I put all the links to the products, so every product that we review, you can go onto the page, see the review, and there'll be a link there to the website of the Kava bar or the product. And I guess the other thing too I'll say is we got a lot of life changes coming up this summer for us. So I think in July timeframe, we're going to be moving and hopefully to our like somewhat forever home.
Hopefully
maybe.
There's a kava bar nearby.
But so we'll probably be taking like, a couple week break sometime in July where we won't be doing podcasts or, product reviews. So we just have a big, again, life event coming up. So
Yeah, that's about it.
Yay. Well, thank you guys for being with us and everyone tuning in. Go ahead and check the description for the links to not only episode 40, the one that we mentioned in the very beginning of Kava and Kettlebells, about the Fijian farmers, but also their general podcasts are there as well. And if you have any comments, questions, inquiries, anything that's come up from what you've heard in this episode, go ahead and send me an email, hello@marinamars.com, and I'll make sure that we share it and we get to the bottom of it. So if anything else comes up till then, as you know, let me know if you need anything.